Throughout the many iterations of the Blue Bomber, Capcom has tried out tons of gimmicks, and while some of these gimmicks were great and ended up becoming staples of the series, other gimmicks were just horrible, which is why we're here today to go over the worst gimmick from every Mega Man game 1 through 11. Mega Man 1, being the first Mega Man game ever created, has many gimmicks that became staples of the franchise for years to come. Now, the official definition of a gimmick is a trick or device intended to attract attention, publicity, or business. But we all know in these videos it means pretty much whatever I decide it means at any given moment. Most of Mega Man 1's gimmicks did end up sticking around though. For example, the disappearing blocks show up in every single Mega Man game ever made, the Gutsman platforms make an updated appearance several more times throughout the series, and even the Magnet Beam created the gimmick of having extra items or weapons apart from the ones the Robot Masters give you. Unfortunately for Mega Man 1, this is not a video on the best gimmick from every Mega Man game, this is a video on the worst gimmick from every Mega Man game. So despite possibly having some of the best gimmicks in the entire series, we need to figure out which is the worst, and I think deep down we all know exactly which gimmick from Mega Man 1 is the most abysmal. Of course, it's the extra long boss corridors. Now, boss corridors in general are something I really enjoy in Mega Man games, but the corridors in Mega Man 1 are horrible. Not only are there enemies spread throughout them, which honestly sometimes is not so bad, but some of them are vertical on top of having stupid enemies. And before anybody tells me to get good, this is not a difficulty problem, you literal noob. This is a fun problem. You cannot climb up Elecman's boss corridor and have a good time without lying, and if you even try to, then I'm going to point and laugh at you because these extra long boss corridors are the worst gimmicks from Mega Man 1. Mega Man 2 does not introduce as many gimmicks as Mega Man 1, but it does feature the return of the previous gimmicks from Mega Man 1. For example, the Gutsman platforms have a much more boring rendition inside of Crashman stage, but these things just make me wish I was playing Mega Man 1, which is not a common occurrence within Mega Man 2. The disappearing blocks of course make a return as well, along with having extra items like items 1, 2, and 3. But one gimmick Mega Man 2 introduces is having all 8 bosses at once within the refights. This is probably one of my favorite gimmicks in all of Mega Man for some reason, so obviously I'm not going to be considering the refights for this video. I guess technically you could say that having 8 Robot Masters in general is a gimmick introduced in Mega Man 2, but even I think that's a stretch for the term gimmick, so let's not even go there. Besides, there is one iconic gimmick in Mega Man 2 that isn't bad or anything, but still may be the worst, being the lasers from Quickman stage. Now look, before everyone gets angry at me, please hold your horses. I like the lasers a lot. In fact, I don't even use Flashman's weapons to get past them because I enjoy the challenge of dodging the lasers. But the reputation these lasers have built up over the years misrepresents themselves in a way that turns a lot of newer Mega Man players away, plus I think these lasers would look great in the thumbnail, so despite being actually pretty good, the Quickman lasers are the worst gimmick from Mega Man 2. Mega Man 3 is an incredibly weird game in terms of gimmicks because it introduces a whole lot of new stuff. Most obviously is sliding. I mean, this isn't really a gimmick, I guess, but it was certainly introduced in Mega Man 3. Also, as difficult as it can be to first incorporate sliding into your Mega moveset, I really enjoy sliding as a whole and even miss it sometimes when going back and playing these slideless Mega Man games. Mega Man 3 also introduces mid-stage battles with Proto Man. This can be really annoying and frustrating if you are a Mega Man noob, but if you're having trouble with this guy, just subscribe to me and soon you'll be able to beat him without even getting hit. The way to do that, by the way, is to just slide underneath Proto Man and get behind him while he jumps around. It can be a bit tricky to get the timing on this right, but it's not that hard to learn, and once you do, you will have no issues dealing with your pesky robot's brother. Also, I really enjoy fighting Proto Man in the middle of the stage because it's a good break and variety from the rest of the platforming within Mega Man 3. Rush Marine is another gimmick from Mega Man 3, but I like Rush Marine a lot. The only other two gimmicks I'd ever consider for the worst in Mega Man 3 would be the Brakeman fight and Doc Robots. But I like the Brakeman fight a lot, actually. I feel like if anything it's way too easy, but it would be cool to see little fights like this before the Wily Castle in future Mega Man games. The Doc Robots, on the other hand, are very frustrating. The idea of having to beat 4 harder versions of the stages you've just completed is not a bad idea in terms of design, and I think everything was executed flawlessly. The problem here is this is probably the largest largest and most dramatic difficulty spike in any Mega Man game ever. The actual stages are fun and can be gotten used to, but if you do not have all of the Doc Robot's weapon weaknesses memorized, then you're just gonna have a bad time. It's not even that the fights themselves are the hardest thing in the world either, it's just that with there being 2 fights per stage on top of extra difficult platforming challenges, the entire situation combines into this horrible mix of frustration and sadness, which is why the Doc Robots are the worst gimmick from Mega Man 3. Mega Man 4, the most underrated Mega Man game, fittingly has some underrated gimmicks to go along with. First of all, just like the Magnet Beam from Mega Man 1, you are able to get balloons and a grappling hook as extra weapons hidden throughout the stages, which is always a great touch. Mega Man 4 is also the first game to introduce 2 different castles in one game, which I'd say is a great gimmick that I wish was carried over to Mega Man 11. I guess the Quicksand and Pharaoh Man stage is technically a gimmick, but I think it definitely works well for that stage, and maybe you could say the Grasshopper section is a gimmick, but I like that a lot too. Mega Man 4 also introduces charge shots, but that's not really a gimmick, and if it was, do you really think it's gonna be the worst? Really? Charge shots? You think charge shot is the worst gimmick for Mega Man 4? You're crazy! The worst gimmick from Mega Man 4 is the fact that enemies jump out of pits and kill you! I know this is something that happens in a lot of Mega Man games before this, but for some reason in Mega Man 4, it just always feels way worse. And for that reason, those stupid pit enemies are the worst gimmick from Mega Man 4. Mega Man 5 does not introduce too many new gimmicks, but it does carry over and update a lot of gimmicks from the past. Just like Mega Man 4, Mega Man 5 also has 2 different castles you have to go through, but I still really like this idea, so obviously the 2 castle thing is not going to be the worst gimmick. Beat letters also make their first appearance in Mega Man 5, but Beat is awesome, and so are the secrets that you need to find to unlock them, so yeah, that's not the worst gimmick either. It could be argued that Gravity Man stage having anti-gravity areas is a gimmick, but I love that gimmick, and Gravity Man has one of the most fun Mega Man stages of all time, so I wish that gimmick would return. Wave Man stage has this bubble section, which might technically be a gimmick, but this gimmick was so good it was stolen by Mega Man 9, which means this cannot be the worst gimmick. Right after those bubble platforms, there is a boating section Mega Man has to deal with if he doesn't have any super arrows on hand, and while this is actually a gimmick, I really enjoyed this section every time I play it. But there is one trend that Mega Man 5 set, which was pretty weird, and I don't think it was ever brought back in any other Mega Man game, being these weird secret walls. I do not mean like the wall you blow up to get a beat letter, that one is really cool. I mean these secret walls you can jump up and inside to get items. I don't mind these sections or anything because, well, I get items, so why would I be upset? But as far as secrets go, I feel like these are sort of weird, and I would much prefer having a secret room or an explodable wall than whatever this is. So yeah, these weird walls are the worst gimmick from Mega Man 5. Mega Man 6 may be one of the most polished games on the NES, but are its gimmicks up to the same standard? Well, the 2 castle gimmicks return once again, so that's pretty great, but there's also a new gimmick surrounding the way that Rush works. Instead of having your normal everyday Rush Coil and Rush Jet, you now have Rush Adapter, which gives you wings and a jetpack, which allows you to fly. You also have the Boxing Glove Adapter, which allows Mega Man to punch, and while that does seem weird for a guy with a gun arm and everything, I still do enjoy the gameplay and design of the Boxing Adapter. Mega Man 6 also introduces the Weapon Energy Balancer, but I do not think that's a gimmick, and even if it was, it's a pretty darn good one. These platforms that you shoot into Oil and Flame Man stage might be a gimmick, but again, if they are, this gimmick is pretty freaking good. There are also alternative secret paths you can take to defeat the bosses, but this is a super awesome gimmick that I don't think anyone would ever try to argue with. But there is one gimmick that I've talked about before, which kind of freaks me out despite being kind of fun, which is Centaur Man's Upside Down Water. Like, yeah, this is cool, but also my brain melts while trying to fully understand how this is even possible, and I don't really enjoy it when my brain melts. So yeah, this Upside Down Water is the worst gimmick from Mega Man 6. With the NES gimmicks taken care of, it's now time to look at the newer gimmicks of the Mega Man series, and with these newer gimmicks on later entries, they have way more bits to work with than the 8-bit NES games, so I assume this means they're going to be super impressive and spectacular, but to be honest, I don't know for sure because, well, I don't know exactly what a bit even is, to be completely honest with you guys. But, there's more of them in these upcoming gimmicks, so, haha, that's good. More bits, haha! Mega Man 7 introduces the gimmick of being on the Super Nintendo, but this is a gimmick that the rest of the series neglected to repeat. Except for like Mega Man Soccer, but I mean, come on, that doesn't count. Mega Man 7 is also the first Mega Man game to introduce a bolts or a screw shot, but you probably didn't even know that because the only place in the entire game where you could find that information is inside of the manual, and I can't read. You would think that would automatically be the worst gimmick, but just wait, there's a pretty bad one that I've complained about before. A pretty good one on the other hand though is having an intro stage as well as a mid-game stage. Though to be honest, I much prefer the intro stage to the mid-game stage because the mid-game stage has a very ugly boss battle, but I talk about that freak way more in my ugliest enemies video if you want to see that. But without further ado, the worst gimmick from Mega Man 7 is definitely the fact that you start with only 4 bosses. I mean, I know this originated from the Game Boy games, as my comment section has told me over a million times, but I literally do not care. This is stupid. Let me fight all 8 Robot Masters at once, you fool. This is why this is the worst gimmick from Mega Man 7. Mega Man 8 has the same 4 boss at first gimmick as Mega Man 7, which would make you think it's going to be the same thing, but no, Mega Man 8 has far worse gimmicks than just that. First of all, the screws in this game are the only game where they are not infinite and you have to find all the locations of each screw. This in itself is not horrible, but compared to the screw economies where you can get them from just enemy drops is a complete disaster. The auto-scroller gimmick thing is only fun the first time you play it, but I guess it's not completely horrible, and I guess the gimmicks in Astro Man stage are not the worst, but I certainly do not like them. Even Sword Man stage has some maze-like gimmicks which are not my favorite in the world, but I guess they aren't too bad. The worst gimmick from Mega Man 8, however, is the infamous jump jump slide slide. Yep, I mean, I don't know what you expected to be here, but it better have been this. Rockman and Forte, the coolest Mega Man game of all time. This game is full of only the most amazing gimmicks and bits of level design, but even the great and mighty Rockman and Forte has a few pieces of garbage mixed into the dish. Though that is mostly because of Mega Man 8, but that's not the point. I've seen people refer to the conveyor belt section of Dynamo Man stage as a gimmick, but that's completely crazy, and even if it is a gimmick, it is pretty fun. But that being a gimmick would also make Metal Man's conveyor belt a gimmick, and I don't think I want to go there at all, so just stop. There is a special stage specifically for testing out the functions of all of your weapons, which I would consider to be my favorite gimmick from Rockman and Forte just because of how peaceful the vibes are here, but the worst gimmick from Rockman and Forte is actually pretty obvious and similar to Mega Man 7's, being the jank stage selection. I mean, what on earth is going on here? Seriously, I love this game, but the entire point of Mega Man is to be able to beat bosses in any order I want, and this is about as far away from any order I want as possible, which is why Rockman and Forte's stage select is by far the worst gimmick from Rockman and Forte. Mega Man 9 is famous for bringing back the gimmick of having 8-bit graphics and a major deficiency in sliding and charge shots. You could argue that's the worst gimmick since it's fun to slide around and charge your Mega Buster, but I respect Mega Man 9 and 10 for what they were going for, so I'm not going to hold any of that against them. Besides, the gimmicks in the level design are much more interesting anyway. The teleporters in Galaxy Man stage are awesome, the Jewel Man chandeliers are super fun to mess around with, and even this flower guy from Hornet Man stage is a super fun time. But the worst gimmick for Mega Man 9 is obviously the one it stole from Wave Man stage in Mega Man 5. I mean, come on, can't you get any ideas of your own Mega Man 9? You had to go and steal Wave Man's poor thing? I mean, come on, hasn't Mega Man 5 suffered enough? So because of Mega Man 9's criminal activities, this is the worst gimmick from Mega Man 9. Mega Man 10 is very similar to Mega Man 9 in pretty much everything except for the gimmicks. Chill Man stage has those ice blocks that I've talked about a lot, and maybe they aren't a gimmick, but they are certainly frustrating to deal with. Nitro Man stage has these awesome living train things that you can just ride, which I find amazing, and really I can't get enough of them every time I play the game. Commando Man stage brings back the quicksand gimmick from Pharaoh Man stage, and I guess the platform riding thing in Blade Man stage could be considered to be a gimmick, but I like that thing and think it's really cool. But the worst gimmick from Mega Man 10 is the gross, vile, disgusting oil that hits you in Pump Man stage. I mean, ew, what is that stuff? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's the worst gimmick from Mega Man 10. Mega Man 11 has one blaring obvious gimmick that is probably the gimmickiest gimmick in the entirety of the Mega Man franchise, being the double gear system. Now, this gimmick certainly is not bad, but I would be lying if I tried to say I didn't forget about this thing for the majority of my first few playthroughs of Mega Man 11. I really do have fun with this thing though on the times I do remember that it exists, so it's obviously not the worst gimmick from Mega Man 11, but I do think it's funny how this is the best example of a Mega Man gimmick literally ever. Mega Man 11 also introduces the bosses having their own double gear system, which could be counted as its own gimmick since this is related to all the boss fights, but not only do I think this is actually cool, but also they already did this in Mega Man X3, and I like Mega Man X3 a lot, so there's no way you'll catch me saying this is a bad thing. Torchman stage has this fire section where you gotta avoid getting burnt to a crisp, but I'm actually good at Mega Man unlike you noobs, so I enjoy this section. And if you want to get as good as I am at Mega Man, then you know what to do. As long as you know to subscribe, that is. Everybody knows that if you subscribe to me, then you're great at Mega Man, right? Everybody knows that. But you know what the worst gimmick in all of Mega Man 11 really is? It's the difficulty settings being expanded upon to accommodate newer gamers. Come on, noobs are supposed to get wrecked. What happened to the old days like Rockman 2 where your only choices were difficult mode or nothing at all? Those were the worst gimmicks from every Mega Man game 1 through 11. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, you should try out this new gimmick on YouTube called subscribing and turning on notifications and watching all of my videos. Or don't. I mean, I'm not your mom, so I guess you don't have to.